Grab a cup of tea or a glass of wine and tune in for Inspired Conversations with publisher Linda Joy. On Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern, Linda creates sacred space for leading female luminaries, empowering authors, heart-centered female entrepreneurs, coaches, and healers. A soulful venue where guests openly share the fears and obstacles they've overcome, wisdom and lessons learned, and the personal journey that led them to the transformational work they do in the world. Inspired Conversations to empower you on your path to authentic, soulful living.
Welcome to Inspired Conversations. I'm your host, Linda Joy, Intentional Living Guide, publisher of Aspire Magazine, the beloved inspirational magazine for women since 2006. And you know, my friends, if you haven't claimed your free subscription, I encourage you to do so now at subscribe-to-aspire.com, along with being filled with inspirational, transformational content written by women and for women, including my guest today. You also receive over dozens of transformational gifts from people like my guest who are making a really big difference in the world and want to support you in living your best life. So thank you for being here. Today is a really important topic to me because it's something I've struggled with all my life. And as a woman, I'm sure you're going to relate with this conversation, my friends, because getting and staying healthy is such a challenge for many women, especially midlife women. And I recently turned 60, and because of a health challenge, really have shifted over the last few months how I treat my body, how I feed my body, how I nourish my body. And today we're going to be talking about something a lot of women struggle with. I know from personal conversations with my guest that sugar is a struggle. And it was my struggle. It was my my weight to my burden to carry, I guess you can say. So while nutrition and exercise are extremely important, there are also mindset shifts that have to take place in order to make permanent change. And that's why I wanted my guest here today. Sarah Haas is a woman's weight release expert and body lift coach, integrative nutrition health coach, a certified personal trainer, podcast host, and speaker. And I got to tell you, she draws on her education and personal experiences as a 50-year-old single mom and breast cancer survivor who walks along midlife women to guide and support them to become healthy, vibrant, and unapologetically confident. I am so blessed to have just recently connected with Sarah and thrilled that she's sharing her wisdom in Aspire Magazine and other projects that I have coming up, because she has such a powerful way of delivering a message that helps women feel heard and supported and not judged for where they are. And her holistic approach to creating overall health integrates nutrition, body movement, self-care, self-compassion, and body love. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you, Linda, so much. I am very honored to be here. I appreciate it.
Well, you and I have held some personal conversations, my friend, and I was so thrilled when we connected, and you're now writing for Aspire Mag and having you on the show. This is something so many women struggle with, but especially in midlife. So let's talk about your journey that led you to doing this work in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. So about 12 years ago, my son, I wasn't in the nutrition or fitness space yet at that time. I kind of, I taught classes at my gym and I kept myself really healthy, but that wasn't my life's work yet. It was my calling, but it wasn't my work yet. And my son was 6 years old. He was in kindergarten and he was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, which is different than type 2 in that it's not lifestyle related in any way. And also you can't make it better. You can't make it go away. So it's a lifetime diagnosis. And I know anyone out there listening who has children, as a mom, that's, so devastating and so upsetting to hear that your child has an illness they're going to live with for the rest of their life. So I threw myself into learning and studying. And thankfully, I found out that type 1 diabetes, while it's not curable, it is very treatable in that as long as you take care of your body and do what you need to for your health, you can live an absolutely normal life. And, you have to do some extra things because your body is insulin dependent. So he has an insulin pump, and there's a whole lot that goes into that, balancing blood sugars and, lots of extra checkups and doctor's appointments and blah, 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 blah. But the awesome thing that came out of it was I was a mom of two at the time. I had a daughter who was 8 and a son who was 6. And we really, really started focusing on our health and our nutrition and making sure we stayed active and making sure we weren't overdoing it with the sugar and the unhealthy, snacks like chips and things like that. And I realized that, yes, he has this disease. And if he doesn't take care of his body, it will catch up to him sooner than someone who doesn't have diabetes. But the lifestyle and the diet that they were recommending for him was very practical, and it's what everybody should be doing to take care of their health and their life. And it doesn't have to be extreme. It can be very balanced. And a mom with 2 young kids, you have to figure out a way that it's actually going to work. I was a working mom, busy, juggling all of the things. I didn't have time to be constantly in the kitchen and counting, calories or points or any of those things. And we weren't going to be able to just be restrictive all the time with little kids and birthday parties and Halloween and all those Christmas and all that great stuff. So I figured out a way that made it work for me and it made it work for my family. And it was amazing how that rippled out into our lives to not just make our bodies healthy, but we had more energy. We were sleeping better. Our time together was better quality time. We had energy to get out and play and to go hiking and to do things. And that enriched our relationships. And I really realized, like, oh, health is a jumping point into making your whole life better. And I realized that, hey, if this is something I could do for me and my family, I know I can do this for other women and I want to. And this needs to be heard. This needs to be understood. And I want to get this out into the world. And that's when I went back and went to school and studied nutrition and truly made this my life's work.
Well, I love when I have a woman on the show, and I've been taping this 7 years now. I have found, Sarah, that a majority of women that I've interviewed, their own personal struggles led them to the soul's work they are meant to do in the world. And your story is a perfect reflection of what I've witnessed, and it's my truth too. So such a powerful story that your own journey through your child's diagnosis led you to this work. So we have a few minutes. I want to talk before the first break. I want to talk about, because you've gone through what, many of us can relate to at this point in our lives, is you've been divorced, you're a single mom. I've been there for both. And in the last few years, you've survived breast cancer. And I'm curious how that whole journey guides the way that you now teach women's health and overall wellness.
Absolutely. It made a huge difference. So I had already been in the health and wellness space for several years. And in 2019, I was diagnosed with a stage 2 breast cancer and was faced with having all the treatments, chemotherapy, radiation, double mastectomy with reconstruction. So it was about a year and a half worth of brutal, brutal treatments. And I know that because I had been taking such good care of my health going in, that is why I was able to withstand all those really difficult treatments And that's why I was able to come out on the other side. I'm over 2 years cancer free now. I feel incredible. I've been able to rebuild my health, get back to my strength and my exercise and my vitality. My hair's all grown back in. And I know that because I was already aware and trying to do the best I could for taking care of myself, that is why I was able to come out on the other side and thrive. And it led me not only to a journey of realizing how important your physical health is, it manifested into a huge transformation as far as my mental and spiritual health. And now I'm able to carry those messages that I learned to let them sort of flow through me and out to help other women, not just if they're dealing with cancer or breast cancer or anything like that. I believe that the lessons that I learned, part of the reason I was meant to go through that is so that I could use my lessons as an example to help others when they're faced with any type of difficult situation in their lives.
Mm. That's why I love you, my friend, because you're a kindred spirit. I believe in using our own journeys as a way of spreading a message of hope and inspiration. So thank you for that. We're going to take a quick break, my friends, and I'll be back in a moment with Sarah Haas of Sarah Haas, and that's two A's, HAAS, sarahhaaswellness.com. I invite you, get your butt over there because she has powerful free guides to support you on your journey. She offers coaching programs, and you can learn about her podcast at sarahhaaswellness.com. We'll be right back, my friend.
This is OTRFM, part of the IOM radio network.
Inspiration for a Woman's Soul. Aspire Magazine, inspiring and supporting women on the path of self-discovery. Claim your free digital subscription today, which includes access to thousands of dollars of personal development bonus gifts from Team Inspiration partners. Claim your Aspire Magazine subscription today at subscribetoaspire.com.
Welcome back. You're listening to Inspired Conversations. I'm so excited to be having an important conversation today with my guest, Sarah Haas of sarahhaaswellness.com and host of the Boss Body podcast. So, Sarah, sometimes when we go through dark times, which I think by the time you hit midlife, we've all had a few, right? The stories may be different, but we've all had our struggles. And the one thing I see with my audience over 16 years of serving Aspire's audience is it always comes back to a mindset around their health and wellness, the self-judgment, the shame, whether you overeat, whether you undereat, what your weight is. We are so damn tough on ourselves, and I can really relate to that. So I know you work a lot with helping women with mindset shifts. So let's start there. Why do so many women struggle to get and stay healthy? Is it the mindset?
You're absolutely right. It really has to start with the mindset. And I'm sure so many women can relate to this. When you try to get healthy by pushing and punishing and restricting, it's temporary because it doesn't feel good. It's miserable. You're hungry, you're hangry, you feel terrible. You're always, not allowed to eat this and not allowed to eat that. And when you're doing it as a punishment, every thought and feeling that you have, your body hears that and your body reacts to that. And when you start from a negative place, you're only going to get negative results. And so the work that I do with women is to really try to get under the surface and figure out what's that driving force, like where we have so much shame. Like you said, we have that inner critic that is just constantly berating us, and we're ashamed of how we look. We feel like we're not enough. We're not pretty enough. We're not thin enough. We're not a good enough mom. We don't work hard enough. Our house isn't clean enough. It goes on and on and on, the not enoughness. And the thing is, if you can change that mindset and learn to love and appreciate yourself. That's why I took on the title of body love coach, because it's absolutely not about releasing the weight first. It's about loving yourself and knowing that you're worth the time and the effort to nourish yourself, because so many women are so busy. I was a single mom. I got divorced after 17 years, 2 kids, and I understand we're so busy. And, we're taking care of our family, we're taking care of our home, we have to get kids to school, we have to get to work, and it's overwhelming. But when we have that underlying feeling all the time of unworthiness, we throw our own health under the bus in order to take care of everybody else. So the women I work with, and this is all women out there pretty much, we're givers, we're generous, we're nurturers, we're lovers. We want to take care of everyone and everything in our lives that we care about. Even some things that we don't care that much about, we struggle with saying no and setting boundaries. And we end up putting everybody else first and leaving ourselves last on the list. And you know how that goes. If you're whatever's last on your list is the thing that never gets done. So if you want to eat healthy and shop healthy and have time to exercise, if that keeps getting put to the bottom of the list and not happening, that's the problem. So it really has to start with changing that mindset.
I got to tell you, I can relate to every single thing that you said. For myself, especially putting yourself at the end of a long to-do list. I've been with Dana 28 years, and he'd say to me, babe, you have not eaten one thing. You've been in front of the computer. This is back when I was really out of balance. He says, you haven't eaten one thing. You haven't got out in front of that computer in 14 hours. So I was always dehydrated, Sarah. I was undernourished, which of course means my weight actually I was gaining weight because my body was like, something's going on. She's starving us. And it wasn't like conscious, I'm not going to eat. It was, I had to get things done, right? And you and I have had personal conversations when I said I was out of balance. I was in the masculine energy. It was about 20, 25 years ago, chasing, pushing, striving. So the nurturing, the loving, and honoring myself was way at the end. And others didn't see it in me, but I had such an internal struggle of like, where do I put myself on this busy to-do list? And now, as you know, I'm at the top of my to-do list. Now, I still struggle with food issues at times. And every conversation I have with women, they all struggle with something around this. And I think it doesn't help with the media coming at us all the time, especially I'd say in the last decade. Have you noticed that is a big issue that feeds a lot of women's insecurities and food issues?
Oh, 100%. It's very societal. As women, we are supposed to always be fit and always be slim and always have a smile on our face and always be glowing and youthful. And the truth is, behind the scenes, we are exhausted. We are struggling. We're not getting enough sleep. We're not keeping ourselves hydrated. That's a huge one that I see for so many women. We go all day and we're working so hard. We're in the work zone and we've got to get this done and got to get this list checked off, that we neglect even drinking water, much less eating. And for some women like you, that manifests into not eating enough. And like you said, when you don't eat enough, your body goes into starvation mode and it says, oh my goodness, this is an emergency. We need to save every bit of fat that we take in, we need to store it because we're going to need it later. And then in other women, it is a stress eating thing, and they're just so rushed. And it's just like, what can I grab? What's the quickest thing? Do I just need to go through the drive through, or just, get something out of the machine or whatever? And not even like slowing down or taking the time to nourish your bodies. And it's a huge problem. And going back to like what I said about being the nurturer and always taking care of people, that has sort of become, over the years, we learned this from the generations before us, that that's our responsibility. That's our job in the world. And now we're also taking on these extra roles with working, and, there's divorce now. So you might be a single mom. And so you have to do both. You have to do the quote, masculine energy type things like action, moving forward, getting things done, working. And then we're also responsible for the feminine side, which we overdo by taking care of everybody else and nourishing everybody else. And in the process, we're in the background dying and not taking care of ourselves. And a lot of times that will manifest itself in illness. If you don't give your body and your mind and your soul a rest, something will happen, and it will eventually force you to. It might be sooner, it might be later, but that comes up. And I always, when I work with clients, one of the first things that I ask them is, what are the 4 absolute basics that we as humans have to have in order to survive on Earth? One is oxygen. Okay, that's a given. We don't have to give ourselves that. It just happens. But the other is water, food, and sleep. Those are the very basic, minimal absolutes that we have to survive as humans. And those are the 3 things that most of us neglect and put way last on the list. And so we have all this other busyness and all these other responsibilities, and then we're neglecting these basics.
Well, for me, what you said about nourishing yourself, I never understood that word, to be honest, Sarah, because of my relationship with food from a young age, because I was considered anorexic for 15 years, like from 15 to 30. I was 99 pounds. And for me, food was never nourishing. It was like a chore, a task, something I had to do. And then as I got into that masculine chasing energy, for me, it was like just fill a hole, right? So what would I do? I'd grab 3 slices of bread with loads of butter, nothing nutritional. I didn't understand, or I was so disconnected from my body that it isn't just putting something in your mouth. It's about, is this nourishing for my body so that it can be the best? And that's been the biggest switch for me in the last 18 months, is choosing whatever I choose, and I do it with less judgment now. Is it nourishing to my body? I'd rather have a quarter of an avocado than, grab that bag of cheese doodles that I used to be addicted to, which is all chemicals. Is that what you see too? Is like choosing to see your relationship with food differently?
Oh yes, it's a real mindset switch, because the dieting industry has taught us to fear food and to look at food as an enemy. You need to restrict, you need to cut down on your portions, you need to go into a calorie deficit. And so it's all about, don't do this, don't do that. And the message that I give is, forget about what not to do and think about adding in what your body needs. So we're not counting things, we're not depriving ourselves, but we're making sure every day that we're getting what we need on our plates. We need minerals and vitamins from fresh fruits and vegetables. We need protein with every single meal, because that is what is the building block of our muscles, and that's what's going to keep us strong. And by looking at it from a different perspective, like you said, this is nourishment. You are what you eat. That is, it sounds cliche because it's been out there for so long, but it's absolutely true. The quality of your cells can only be as good as the quality of food that you put in your body. And when you start looking at it every day as, what do I need? What does my body need? How do I want to give myself this self love? By putting in the nourishment that's going to give me energy, that's going to help me feel good. You don't want to eat something that's going to give you a slump 2 hours later. Because if you look at it in a way of what is going to make me feel good, then it's a whole different mindset switch of caring for yourself and loving yourself. And you mentioned, the cheese doodles and things like that.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, yeah. It's important not to live on those things, but I also think it's important to have a little bit of those indulgences, because if you don't, eventually you're just going to go crazy on it. So, like for
Then,
me, for example, I love tortilla chips and salsa, you know, and I allow myself to have that once or twice a week, a small handful, because if I don't, I'm going to end up going to a Mexican restaurant and plowing through the unlimited basket plus all the margaritas to go along with it. And if your child has a birthday party, have a piece of cake, because that's part of the community. That's part of the ritual. You don't want to isolate yourself around food and skip events because you're worried that there's going to be indulgences that you're not going to be able to refuse, because you don't want to take on any type of health plan that's going to mean you can't ever go out to dinner with your friends, that you can't ever have a cocktail, because that's food should be joyful. Food is something to love about life. And it's not what you eat once in a while that affects your overall health. It's what you're eating day after day after day that adds up. And so I have people imagine, okay, let's say you're a fast food hamburger eater. And what if you had to save the paper wrapper of every single hamburger that you eat over a week or a month or a year, and look at that in a basket? You would see how that is adding up, and you can imagine how that is adding up in your body. Or a cigarette smoker, if they had to save every cigarette butt and have that visual of, oh my goodness, like I'm smoking a whole pack a day. That's what, like 20 or 25 cigarettes? That's going to fill up real quick. Or what if it was the lettuce bag? What if you ate so much lettuce every day that you could see that? And when you visualize, like, okay, if I eat 2 little handfuls of tortilla chips every week, but I have a big salad with tons of nourishing vegetables on it every single day, the balance is skewed in the right direction of nourishment instead of indulgence or ignoring your own body's needs.
the visuals are a powerful tool. I could visualize it as you were doing it, like, oh, I don't want that many hamburger wrappers. We're going to take a quick break again, Sarah. When we come back, I want to talk about sugar, because it's an insidious little bugger, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. So many of us struggle with that. And I'm not immune either. So I have a lot of great strategies.
Yay. We'll be back in a moment, my friends, with Sarah Haas of sarahhaaswellness.com. Be sure to visit her site, download the free guides that she has there. I'll tell you about one in a moment, because it really shifted this one insight I had when I received it this fall. I'll be back in a moment, my friends.
Your worth is not determined by the number on the scale. You are enough right now, exactly as you are. If you're like many midlife women, you've thought, if I could just reach my ideal weight, I'd be so much happier. What we're really craving is our own love and acceptance, and Sarah Haas is that guide for your journey. Sarah is a women's weight release expert and body love coach and walks alongside midlife women ready to say yes to self-care, self-compassion, and body love so they can become the healthy, vibrant, and unapologetically confident women they're here to be. Her holistic approach integrates nutrition, body movement, and self-care to nurture body, mind, and spirit. Visit sarahhaaswellness.com for supportive resources, programs, and more for midlife women ready to reclaim their health.
Welcome back. You're listening to Inspire Conversations. I'm with Sarah Haas, women's weight release expert and body love coach. And today we're talking about making nourishing choices when it comes to food so that you're always loving your body instead of judging it. She shared so many insights and strategies already, but in this segment, we're going to talk about sugar and how insidious it is and hard to give up. But that's why Sarah's here today, so she can give us some tips to help us release that struggle. So Sarah, you know, in personal conversations, I shared that for years I was seriously addicted to sugar. Now it's funny, I don't drink alcohol, I don't smoke cigarettes. I could give those two things up. I gave up alcohol 26 years ago and smoking 2.5 packs a day 30 years ago. Sugar, it was my nemesis, right? I'm like, I know this in my mind, but I would have like 4 teaspoons to 7 teaspoons of sugar in a medium iced coffee. And at the time, way back then, not anymore, I was doing 2 to 3 iced coffees a day. That's just added sugar, never mind everything else. So what is the number one complaint around sugar that you see in the work you have with clients?
Oh, exactly what you're saying. It's so addictive. And it's not like something where once you get that sugar fix satisfied, that it goes away. It's like the more you get, the more you want. It's a beast. And and it sticks with you and it's constant. It's insidious. And I see it all the time. And luckily, one of the strategies is what I was talking about earlier about figuring out what you need to add in. Because when you're getting fruits and vegetables, you're getting fiber, which helps you feel full. And when you're getting protein, that also helps you feel full. And some of the sugar cravings come from just being hungry in general, because sugar is a quick source of energy. And if you haven't eaten enough and your brain lives on glucose, it has to have it. The brain's the control center. It is going to send out a red flashing light, alert, alert, alert. You've got to get me some glucose. I need energy. And your brain will compel you to go to the quickest source, which is sugar and simple processed carbohydrates like potato chips and pasta and bread. And when I say bread, I mean non whole grain bread. And when my son was diagnosed with diabetes, it is incredible how you can see this take effect firsthand, because he has a monitor that tells you what his blood sugar is, and we know what range it needs to be in. And if he eats, let's say, a sugary bowl of cereal and no protein or anything, just getting those simple carbs, the blood sugar immediately rises up to triple where it needs to be within 15 minutes. And part of being a diabetic is you have to watch out for low blood sugars, because that can be very dangerous. You know, you can pass out, you can end up in the hospital, you can even die. So it's something we have to keep an eye on all the time. And we have to keep some of those simple sugars around. Our go to is juice boxes. A lot of people think of juice as healthy because it's 100% fruit, but it's basically 100% sugar because there's no fiber in there. So they've processed out all the good stuff and just left the sugar basically. So when he gets a low blood sugar, we immediately drink a juice box, and within minutes, the blood sugar has risen back up to a normal level. And the fact is, that's happening in everybody's body when we eat those things. We just don't realize it because we don't have a monitor on that is showing it. And when we talk about blood sugar, what that means is there is sugar literally floating around in your blood looking for somewhere to go. And sugar gets absorbed into the cells, and it's turned into energy, and it sits there and it waits for you to use it. And then if you don't use it, your body says, oh, okay, we'll just store this away for another time when we do need it. And that's where we get that midsection that we're always complaining about. So many of us are like, oh, I just can't get my tummy toned. I just can't lose that weight around my stomach. And that is where it's coming from. It's all that sugar.
One of the things for me too that I didn't realize I wasn't educated is I knew I was eating too much sugar, so I gave up, the Dunkin' Donuts iced coffees. I did that. I drink 2 cups of coffee a day now. But I realize now, looking back, that I was great at ignoring what I considered sugary snacks, candy, all that stuff. Now, I had my treats, don't get me wrong. But guess what I realized? I was still addicted to sugar and my body needed it. I turned to breads and pastas, thinking, well, that's healthier than that chocolate bar. So I was still feeding the sugar addiction. I didn't realize that that was a simple carb, and it is, I'm going to use my language, Sarah, you're the expert, but my body would process it just as if I was eating sugar because I was just grabbing pieces of bread, plain pasta. And I'm like, oh shit, that was hard to really clean up my diet. Do a lot of people make that same mistake thinking, oh, bread is healthier than that cupcake or pasta is healthier? But from a sugar point of view, I'm not saying from a healthy point of view, our body still processes it that way.
That is true in a sense.
Okay, please educate me.
It depends on the type of bread and the type of pasta that you're choosing.
Well, I was choosing all white, so I know
Yes.
anything with fiber is
Yes.
the better choice. I know that now.
Correct.
But back then, I loved the white breads, the white pastas.
Yeah.
It was, Dana would be like, you're just gonna have pasta with butter on it? And I'm like, yes, I love it. And like, there's no nutritional value there.
Correct. There's no nutritional value because they have processed it all out. And the bottom line is money. The food industry is out to make money. And they realized if they took bread or pasta or flour or whatever and processed all of the brown stuff, which is the wheat, which is the nutritious part, the fibrous part, that it's going to last a whole lot longer on the shelves. So the bread, do you ever notice that bread, store-bought bread doesn't go bad? Like it never gets moldy? Yeah, that's because they took that hull out, the wheat, and just left us with nothing. And I love the word enriched flour because they added vitamins to it because they processed all the vitamins out. And so they like to call it enriched. So it kind of sounds like, oh, okay, that's healthy. That's good for me. No, when you see the word enriched flour, that means white flour. That means simple carbohydrate. That means equals sugar. But I want to be clear that bread and pasta can be part of a healthy diet. You just have to really pay attention to labels and really pay attention to the one that you're getting and make sure it says 100% whole wheat or 100% whole grain.
That's what I did to really shift everything. We're going to take a final break, Sarah. I almost forgot. We're going to take our final break, and then we're going to come back for our last 10 minutes. And I want to talk about some tips and practices that you can offer to help our audience take control of our health, whether that's physical, mental, or spiritual. I'll be back in a moment, my friends, with Sarah Haas of sarahhaaswellness.com. Be sure to visit her website for all her empowering resources to support you in reclaiming your health. We'll be back in a moment. You're listening to Inspired Conversations. Thanks for being here today. So, Sarah, we've covered a lot in the call in this last segment. Do you want to share some tips and practices that the woman listening can use to start to take control of their health on any level?
Absolutely. So, like when I said earlier that there's a real underlying belief that we're not worth taking this time for ourselves for self care. And that has to shift in order for any type of wellness plan to stay in place. That is one of the biggest reasons that we're stuck in this cycling of weight cycling, gaining and losing, and being on a diet and being off a diet, which is so unhealthy for our bodies and it's so unhealthy for our minds. I hear so many women say, I just don't have willpower. I'm just a failure, and that isn't true. It's just that you haven't been given the right plan that will work for you. So, number one is changing that mindset. And I have a couple of different exercises to help women get started with knowing that they're worthy, knowing that they're good enough, and knowing that it's time to nourish yourselves and give as much love and care and compassion to yourself as you do for everyone else. So, first of all, it's tackling that inner critic. When I say inner critic, I'm sure everybody knows what I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah.
It's that voice that is beating us up all day long and saying, you look terrible in your clothes. You're too fat. You didn't do this well enough. You need to work harder. And you've got to listen to what you're saying to yourself all day long because your body hears those messages, and you don't get motivated and you don't go forward with positive action by beating yourself over the head with a baseball bat all day long. I heard a quote once that said, floggings will continue until morale improves. And I thought that encapsulated it perfectly. We think we're just going to beat ourselves up into submission. So when you hear, the first step is to become aware of that inner critic. What is she saying? And when you hear that voice telling you something horrible, I want you to imagine that a daughter or a very good friend or someone that you love so much came to you and said, here's what I'm saying to myself every day. I had a client recently who was making such good progress. She was doing so well, exercising, taking care of herself. She wasn't seeing the results as fast as she wanted to. And she said, I just still feel like I'm so fat and disgusting. And I said, all right, you have a little girl. She had a daughter who was about 1. And I said, if your daughter was grown and was struggling with her weight and was feeling down about herself, and she said, I'm fat and disgusting, what would you say to her? And she immediately burst into tears
Yeah.
because she could never imagine in a million years saying something to her daughter that she would say to herself. So the first thing is when you hear that inner critic piping up, switch it around and say, what would I say to a loved one who was dealing with this? You would encourage, you would love, you would support, you would point out all that they're doing right and how hard they're working and how amazing they are and how amazing they are in other aspects of their lives, how hard they're working everywhere, and pointing out the fact that you're caring so much about everyone else that you're not caring for yourself, and you need to care for yourself and love yourself. So I think that's a huge first step.
It's a powerful first step because as a mother of a 38-year-old daughter who's now raising an 11-year-old granddaughter, um, it's so insidious and younger young ladies are suffering with this. So I like to believe if I can heal this, I'm going to heal the next generations too of women and girls. So that was powerful because it begins with us, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And these inner critic voices have come from your past. They don't come from you. They come from these false beliefs that we've picked up over time. It could be from parents, it could be from teachers, ex husbands. I know that was a big one for me. Ex bosses or bosses you've had over the years, anyone who was important to you or that you looked up to or that had some authority over you, or it even could be bullying or classmates or whatever. We take these messages in, and we all know that when people are mean, it's all about them and it has nothing to do with us. But we internalize it. We take it in like something's wrong with me. I need to do better. I'm not good enough. And we carry those with us. And if we can change our own minds and our own actions and show our daughters and our granddaughters and I say daughters, but really I have a son as well, and this message applies to everybody. If we change ourselves, we change the future of others. We break cycles.
Yeah, and it's so powerful. That's why I do the work that I do in the world, is to spread messages from experts like you, so that we can break the cycles of self-neglect, self-worth, self-sabotage that are stopping any of us from living our best lives, whether it comes to our health, our sense of life purpose, etc. Before we come to an end, Sarah, I want to share something with the listeners, because you recently released, and we're taping the show earlier than January, you had recently released a no excuses lunch guide to boost your midlife metabolism. And, I grabbed this e-guide from Sarah as she was creating it. And I was like, oh my God. And I think I told you this, didn't I, Sarah? That inside that e-guide, you share that 3-step formula. It's like this plus this plus this. And I was like, where has this? It was so simple. It just says what should be on your plate. But it's like you're choosing what's on your plate, but the guide gives me something to follow. And for someone like me, I needed that. And remember, I called you and said, oh my God, that is so powerful, because it gives me, it's almost like a tip sheet.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I wanted to say thank you for creating the No Excuses Lunch Guide to boost your midlife metabolism. It's on your website. You guys can grab it at sarahhaaswellness.com. But that 3-step formula, Sarah, we have about 2 minutes. Talk to us, girl.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So it's important. I give recipes and I give meal plans and that kind of thing. But you can't just go, but you don't want to have to follow a sheet for the rest of your life and have someone tell you what to eat. And we've gotten it so complicated these days because there's all these plans out there, keto and low carb and intermittent fasting and we've made it so complicated. And really, it just goes back to giving ourselves those basics that we need. And yes, there's a 3-step formula in the guide that just says what you need on your plate in order to have balanced food, in order to give yourself energy, in order to feel light and feel happy and eat healthy every day. We don't have to overcomplicate it. We just need to make sure that we're getting in what we need in the right proportions. And that's what it's all about. It can be very simple, and it's such a relief to realize.
That's the word. That is the word I felt, because it was so simple that it just spoke to me going, oh, Linda, all that stuff that you tried to follow that overcomplicated and confused me. You just give the formula. It isn't like you're telling us what to eat. You're like, as long as it's from this category, and this category. I was like, oh, this is all I need. I needed a simple formula like that will help me nourish my body. And I wanted to say thank you, and I wanted to encourage everyone to grab the No Excuses Lunch Guide to boost your midlife metabolism at sarahhaaswellness.com. Again, Haas is Haas. And Sarah, I want to thank you for joining me. Thank you for the work that you're doing in the world to remind women about the importance of putting themselves at the top of their to-do list. So thank you, my friend.
Thank you so much. It was such an honor to be here.
Until next time, my friends, choose love, choose joy, choose happiness. Blessings.
Thanks for listening to Inspired Conversations with publisher Linda Joy. Join our sacred space every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern and meet leading female visionaries, empowering authors, heart-centered female entrepreneurs, coaches, and healers. Inspired Conversations with Linda Joy is a soulful venue where guests share the obstacles they've overcome, along with wisdom and lessons learned on their personal journey that led them to the transformational work they do in the world. Inspired conversations to empower you on your path to authentic and soulful living.